Yeah.
let's talk, I guess, maybe and dive a little bit into, I guess, and I this is something that a lot of people don't want to talk about, and it's probably just because I think everybody always thinks that they're going to live forever.
Yeah.
Is estate planning.
Right.
And what type of a conversation do you have with your clients when they come to you? Is that something that you always kind of talk about, or is this something that that's kind of
Yeah.
new over the last couple of years?
Over the last couple years, I've kind of really been thinking about, you know, I'm not 21 anymore, right? So, you know, I've come to the acceptance that I'm not going to live forever.
Right.
No matter how long I prolong it, I'm not going to live forever, right? And as my clients age, they're starting to understand that as well.
Yeah.
And my clients, for the most part, I like to surround myself with clients that are driven, that want to succeed. But once all that success has been achieved, or once we see the light at the end of the tunnel, the success tunnel, let's say,
Hmm.
you're going to have assets, you're going to have money, and then what? Right?
Yeah.
You're going to pass away, and you can't take it to the grave.
Right.
Right? So what are you going to do with it? Right? And that's where I come into play now. I start having that conversation with my clients. I said, what do we want to do with this money? Right? What do we want to do with these assets? Do we want to pass? Do we have a second generation? Do we have children? Do we have a third generation, grandchildren that we want to pass these assets on to? Because if we do, you got to remember there's a pretty big tax bill at death that we got to take care of. And
Right.
how do we take care of that? Right?
And is there a particular age that you're starting to have this conversation at with these clients?
I would say no, not a particular age. It's a particular phase in life. And the
Okay.
phase is your kids are not babies anymore.
Right.
Okay. They're autonomous individuals who aren't pooping themselves. Right.
So we're talking about when your kids are around 30 something years old. For some of them, right?
Yeah, for some of them. When you start seeing that your children are not truly attached to your hip,
Yeah.
that's when you start really understanding you're not going to be here forever.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's when you start understanding, hey, I'm in my 40s or 50s and it's still hard. Right. And, it would be really nice if, let's say in your 50s or early 60s, when your parents pass away, that they set up a nice package to transition things over to you without any issues.
Right.
Okay. So I'd say that the phase that I really start discussing this with my clients is if they've had a parent that passed away, and then they see what it's like to deal with an estate and to not have the benefits of a proper estate plan, and B, when they do, when the craziness of diapers and whatnot are over, and the kids are in full-time school, and they can calm down, they can say, okay, you know what, hey, these kids are going to go to university in 5-10 years, and then they're going to be out of the house, and then what? That's when I start bringing up the conversation, really. And
Right.
that's around the phase in life where people start accumulating their wealth,
Okay.
I find.
And yeah. And so what's involved though with estate planning? Like, is there certain products that you're now implementing? Is it insurance? Is it wills?
Mhm.
Like what's all involved in this?
Yeah, so estate planning is, I mean, there's products, there's insurance products, and there's obviously, the will, the last will and testament, and then there's also trusts, right?
Okay.
And corporations and other legal entities, right? But estate planning really starts with listing out what your wishes are for when you pass away, and then translating that into money, because that's really what it translates into at the end of the day,
Hmm.
and then translating that money into how do we get the most money over to achieve what it is that you want, leaving a legacy, making a donation, or leaving money to your children and
Right.
assets to your children,
Okay.
right?
Now,
And
so is this done in steps then? So the first piece then is the will.
no, often the final piece is the will, because
Oh,
the
really?
will is the
Yeah.
document that dictates exactly what happens to your estate.
Mm, okay.
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 So I'll give you an example. All right. let's say you and Darlene have a business and it's a
Right.
successful business and you have a bunch of properties. Okay.
Yep.
Let's say that business, your children are interested in taking over that business, right? Part of the estate plan, for that business is going to be saying, okay, well, at what point do you want to exit and transfer the business over to your children, right? Okay, well, let's say in 15 years, right?
Yep.
Or let's say you're at that point where it's going to happen soon,
Right.
right? That's where we have to say, okay, well, how are we going to transfer this over to the kids? Because if we just wait and have them work and pay them a salary and wait until you die, you could get hit with a pretty big tax bill. But we can do an inter vivos or an in your lifetime transfer over to them in such a manner that will extinguish your value step by step over time before you die, and cleanly transfer the business over to them, right?
Right.
A similar thing can be done with properties. But at the end of it all, then we say, okay, well, here's our plan, but we're still going to get stuck with taxes at death. How do we fund those taxes at death? And that's where life insurance can come into play.
Sorry. So you're saying that you can also do that with your properties, or what now? If I say, okay, I'm going to pass these on to my kids, the properties that we have, we can start staging that from now?
Yeah. So if you have properties sitting in a corporation, for example,
Yeah.
right? Which
Yep.
a lot of my clients do because they're business owners. So they all have a property sitting in a corporation. We can theoretically do an estate freeze, right? Take the
Okay.
property. Okay, look, this corporation has 5 properties worth $1 million each. It's worth $5 million. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
As of today, we're going to freeze that value and give it to mom and dad. Okay. We're then going to create new common shares and give those to the kids via a trust so that they don't own the shares directly.
So from that day, the profits now are going to be for the kids. Is that correct? I just want to make
Correct.
sure I
The
get that clear.
profits and the appreciation in the value of that corporation go to the kids.
Got it. So
right?
we now know. So I now know what myself and Darlene will have for our retirement with that corporation.
Exactly. And we can come up with a schedule to redeem your shares over time, like a wasting freeze, or however it is that we want to compensate you for that value, right? But in the simplest form, we'll start redeeming your shares and paying you out a pension. But you're not going to use that full $5 million.
See, I've never heard of that before. So that's called an estate freeze.
That's an estate freeze. Yeah.
Okay. That's great. See, more people, we need to talk more about this because a lot of times you hardly ever hear about this stuff. At least a lot of times I don't on podcasts or webinars.
It's kind of advanced, and I'm trying to dumb it down, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of technicalities in it. But essentially, yes, it's an estate freeze. An estate freeze is, hey, let's take your assets, your current holdings right now, and freeze them in value, and give that to mom and dad. The future value goes to the children, the grandchildren, whatever it is that you want, right? It goes to the next generation, right? We start wasting away that estate or that frozen estate to mom and dad and take advantage of the marginal tax rates year over year. But there's still going to be value at the end that mom and dad are going to have to pay tax on. Why? Because at the second death of a married couple, there's a deemed disposition at fair market value of all of your assets, right? Okay. So you bought a property for $100,000. When you die, it's worth $1 million. You're deemed to have sold it at fair market value when you die. That's a $900,000 capital gain, right? That's a $450,000 tax bill. Okay. Where are you going to get that money?
Sorry, and look, and I should probably know some of this stuff. So is that probate?
Probate is when you probate your will. That's on top of your income tax. This is income tax.
Got it. Okay. All
right. It's just a capital gain at death.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
So where do we get the money for that tax? Right. So, you can liquidate other assets that don't have gains, so on and so forth. And that's where the planning comes into play. We say, okay, well, we have all these other assets that we can liquidate. So out of the $400,000, we have $200,000 in the bank that takes care of $200,000. Boom, boom, boom. We're still left with $250,000 of tax. How do we fund that? One of the ways we can fund it is through a life insurance policy. right? So
Right.
mom and
Okay.
dad can buy a joint last to die life insurance policy, permanent, whole life, let's say. It builds up over time and comes at tax-free at death because the death benefit's tax-free.
And what type of insurances are there? So there's whole life, and what's the other one there?
So there's two broad categories.
Yeah.
There's permanent life insurance and non-permanent life insurance. So non-permanent is your basic, 10, 20, 30-year term policy, okay?
Okay.
Where you say, I'll give you $50 a month and that'll give me whatever, $500,000 of life insurance just in case I die. That's super important for a young couple that have young children. Because if you were to die prematurely, your family is screwed. And that's cheap, easy, everybody can afford it, okay?
Right.
But then there's permanent policies, which means you own the policy and it has a value to you, okay? So permanent policies can be arguably put into three different categories. Term to 100, which is I'm buying a term policy that I pay into until I hit the age of 100, right? And you're going to get the death benefit. And there's no cash surrender value. There's no investment component to that. It's just pure life insurance. Okay. Then there's whole life, where you're buying a policy and you're giving the money to the insurance company. And then it could be participating, where you get a dividend, right? But essentially you're giving the money to the insurance company and they have their own investment portfolio. Okay. Then there's universal.
If you get that one though, right? Is that where you can you pull money out of there?
Yep, we can get to that for sure.
Yeah,
we can get to that.
Okay.
Then there's universal life, which is a kind of a combination of a term to 100 policy. So there's an insurance component plus segregated funds, okay, which are basically mutual funds masqueraded as insurance policies. So you're paying into insurance and you overfund the policy, theoretically, let's call it, and you're putting money into an investment account on the side.
Right.
Okay? That one's a little bit complicated. Probably we'll keep that aside, right? Because otherwise we'll be on here for 3 hours. But whole life is sort of the classic permanent insurance. It's kind of the easiest one to understand. You start off with an amount of insurance, $1 million, $500,000, whatever the death benefit is. And you have a monthly or annual premium that you pay. And you own the policy per se, okay? Maybe you pay it off in 10 years, 20 years, or you can even have a life pay one. But once it's paid, you own it, okay? And there's a cash surrender value component to it, or AKA an investment component to it, or an asset that you own, which is money on the side that's invested for you by the insurance company. Okay. So we utilize that one quite a bit. It's the easiest one to explain to the clients, and it serves the purpose of covering the taxes at death. And we use it a lot with corporate retained earnings, because there is a very good tax planning opportunity with it, right? But essentially the idea is you give the insurance company money and then you get it at death via a death benefit, which is generally speaking tax-free, right?
And so then now the beneficiaries of the will can then get that money to pay off whatever they need to, the taxes or.
Correct. Yeah.
Got it.
So that's if the beneficiary could be the estate, or you can have beneficiaries such as your children or whomever, and you can bypass the will and bypass probate if you wanted to leave cash directly to someone. But in our case, what from the estate planning perspective of, let's say, covering taxes at death, you're going to leave it to the estate, either directly or indirectly via a corporation.
Got it. Okay.